Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3008, 3687. Today's date is November 6, 2025. It's been almost like a morning at 7:33 a.m. Okay, all right. Let's just jump into the question. Let's go. All right. The question says that what if anger could be channelized into energy? Okay, that is a really good question. Okay, first of all, what is actually this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like actually force you to think about that reality. The reality is kind of like simply based on the knowledge. So when I construct that reality, it really required me a knowledge so that I would create that reality. And when I just use my knowledge to understand and things and that, I feel something really good. I feel that there is a part of some sort of information inside of my brain was kind of like a something in black and white. Because of this question, I'm kind of like utilizing this information again, and it felt really good. It's kind of like something just creating multiple branches inside of me to thinking about that reality and stuff like that. So yeah, it felt, I don't know how do I supposed to explain, but it felt something really good. Disclaimer: the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It is just my opinion. It's raw, it's unfiltered, and it is my opinion. Obviously, my opinion is completely different from your opinion because it's a subjective. Okay, yeah. So do not believe in any kind of like some information that I was kind of like saying, or do not seek any kind of like some information. If you need valid information, go to the internet and get the entire information. All right. This in this particular artifact, I'm just kind of like expressing my opinion. All right. Now let's proceed further. Now the question is that, what if anger could be channelized into energy? Okay, that is a really good question. Okay, yeah. First of all, let's just understand couple of things. Okay, yeah. What is exactly anger and why we have anger? Okay, yeah. Like why we have anger? Like why we have these multiple emotions of anger, sadness, empathy, okay, respects and everything. Why we have that emotions and everything? Well, basically is this thing we actually have this we have this emotion is because of that key we are social animal. Okay, yeah. We are kind of like somebody evolved to live with humans with each other. Like basically is this thing na ki since we are very vulnerable to live in this wilderness. I'm talking about almost like a millions of year ago. We are very much vulnerable because we cannot run faster, we cannot fly, we didn't really have any fur. We are very vulnerable regarding about kind of like something the way that we live. Okay, yeah. But it's just like that na ki because of when other human are kind of like they started surviving. So when we are started surviving together, our survival chances is kind of like became much higher. Okay, yeah. So since then we are kind of like simply started living together. Okay, yeah. And because of we are started living together, it kind of like a something became social animal. Okay, yeah. Because I'm not talking about just kind of like a living together means like one or two people. No, I'm talking about a kind of like combination of people, like 100, 200 people, kind of like that. Okay, yeah, are living together. No, basically when we are living together, there are a lot of things are kind of like a something happen, a social stigma or things like that. We need to share some sort of ideas and thoughts and things and that. We need to build the language, and when we try to build the language, sometimes emotions are kind of like a something express. Okay, yeah. Now, humans are not the only one who can express the emotions. There are so many species who can express their emotions. Like a dog can express their emotions. You actually seen the dog who's kind of like a somebody just barking and things like that. You actually feel that he's angry, and yeah, he's angry. Yeah, he's actually angry. Okay, yeah. Uh, I'm not really sure, but there are so many species of the animal they could kind of like show their emotions and things like that. Obviously, that means they have their emotions too, and we also have the emotions too. So probably is this thing. I think that emotion is a kind of like a universal language that probably we might not understand. Yeah, we understand at some certain point, but we not fully understand. Okay, yeah. Let's just say the person who is actually laughing is considered as a person is actually kind of like in happy state. But there is so many things regarding about his happiness. Might be his happiness might be a fake or things or that. God knows what is it. Whatever. The question what I'm trying to tell you is this thing. When we are kind of like started evolve, when we are started living together, and when we are started living together, we are kind of like simply creating these emotions inside of us, and anger is also one of them. Okay, yeah. Like basically because of this anger, we could kind of like simply create this emotion inside of us. Okay, yeah. Now, why we get anger so much? Like why the people are getting so much angry or things like that? Well, is because of that कि sometimes some of the things is actually happen which is we don't want to happen, and kind of like something happened that probably like I don't really like it, or some people don't really like it. Okay, yeah. And when the people don't really like it, they kind of like express their emotion by angriness. There are multiple ways to kind of like something show the support by kind of like a sadness or things or that. But angriness is a kind of like a something is this thing that kind of like a something express our emotion much more better way. Example, when you're driving a car and suddenly someone kind of like crash your car, you are kind of like only staying very safe and things like that, but suddenly someone is actually crash your car, like somebody took his motorbike and kind of like crash into your bike, crash into your car and things like that. There is 0% there is 0% blame to you because you don't really did anything at all. Okay, he's the one is kind of like a hit to you. So obviously your car crash, so you are very much angry and things and that because you loss of kind of like a something so much amount of money because you have to repair the car and things like that. Okay, yeah. So you are getting so much angry, so you just kind of like a went outside the car and you are kind of like so much angry, say what the fuck did you did and stuff like that. It's kind of like a some basic things that we are kind of like a getting those angers, and it is kind of like a very much common too. Okay, yeah. Now the question is that ki, what if we could kind of like a convert this anger into the action? Can we able to do that thing? Can we convert our action? Can we convert our angry into action? Well, probably is this thing that ki we have to understand that ki there are so many emotions are actually exist to kind of like let you do some sort of action. Okay, yeah. Let's just say you are horny, so that means you have to do a sex. You are sad, then you cry. Okay, yeah. You are angry, you kind of like somebody try to beat someone else. Okay, yeah. So there are different emotions are kind of like somebody letting you represent different action. Okay. Now, basically, is this thing anger is a kind of like something very different thing. Okay, yeah. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing that key in this world people are getting so much angry, and it is very much common. Everyone gets angry, but there are very less people are actually exist so that they would convert their anger into action. Now, what is exactly meaning of convert anger into action? What exactly is this thing? If someone kind of like a hit my car, should I not kind of like a simply say something like should I just kind of like a stay calm or things like that? No, no, definitely not. Like I should supposed to be kind of like a somebody went outside and kind of like a somebody say that what the fuck did you did and kind of like a said something. Okay, yeah. So it is really right na to kind of like a somebody when someone kind of like a did that thing. Oh, yeah, it's kind of like a very much right. Okay, yeah. But the kind of like a situation is not the only one there are multiple kind of like a scenarios actually happen that evoke the kind of like a simply anger. Okay, yeah. What is exactly that? What is exactly is this thing? Let's just say that ki you had a breakup. Okay, yeah. Now you are kind of like a sad. Okay, yeah. You are kind of like a sad and things like that. Sometimes you get angry too. Okay, yeah. Now basically is this thing, you are getting so much angry because of that particular person kind of like a simply break up with you. Okay, yeah. Now what can you do? Like, should you kind of like a call to her and kind of like a say why did you did this thing and that, but she block you. Okay, yeah. You cannot able to call. Then you could kind of like simply go at her house and kind of like said something. But probably is this thing, you can't do that because obviously at home she might kind of like simply have her parents and things and that, it kind of like create another chaos. So you cannot talk to her, you cannot kind of like express your anger to her. Then what should you supposed to do? You kind of like simply go and try to kind of like make sure that the pain that you are actually feeling because you are not letting your anger outside, that pain is actually stuck inside of you and you wanted to dissolve that pain. So you are kind of like doing this kind of like simply alcohol and things like that, which is really not really good. Okay, yeah. So in this particular context, the anger is actually not converted into action. It kind of like converted into the addiction, right? And most of people does that thing. Why? Because in real world, we won't be able to kind of like simply allow to showcase our anger and things like that, because there is a multiple consequences. There are so many things is actually happen and things and that. Okay, so like that's why like basically is this thing, you are getting so much angry about your boss, but you cannot kind of like somebody says kind of like saying what the fuck and things and that. No, you will not. You just kind of like somebody say okay sir and things like that. You are kind of like simply getting so much angry about your boss, but you just kind of like somebody stay that pain, stay that anger inside of you and you won't let get outside. And there is only one way to kind of like dissolve that pain, by alcohol and things like that. By the way, alcohol is not the only way that you could dissolve that pain. Okay, yeah. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing, whatever the pain that you have, you just have to convert that pain into the action. But how? How is this thing? How is that? And what exactly the action means? What? Action means like that, कि kind of like a such a action that kind of like a simply prove other them wrong. You are not kind of like letting your anger, you just kind of like convert your anger into kind of like a such a action that kind of like a simply progress you and things like that. Example, Virat Kohli. Virat Kohli is a very angry person, and he is very successful. He convert his anger into action. When he get kind of like angry, he kind of like convert his anger into his batting skills, and he improve his batting skills, and he hit the century. Obviously when he do that, he was not really in control, so probably there might be kind of like a chances that he might kind of like a something out. But still is this thing that because of his angry, it kind of like a creates a fuel inside of it, and he burn this fuel to kind of like a something such a action that leads to his growth. Okay, most of the people are kind of like somebody getting angry and they just kind of like somebody they just not let that go away and things like that. Okay, yeah. So basically, what if the question is that what if we could convert, like what if we could kind of like convert our angry, like convert our anger emotion into the kind of like something action, like what if anger could channelize into the energy or things like that. Energy and action, these are kind of like some sort of thing. But still, if I'm gonna say wait, they mentioned that if the anger could convert it into the energy. Oh, now energy is kind of like a bit more different in this context. Okay, yeah. Now what is actually energy? Well, basically is this thing na ki the action that we did is like internal drive. Okay, yeah. But the energy is a very different. Electrical energy, potential energy, kinetic energy. Okay, yeah, things like that. Now this is kind of like a something very weird reality. Okay, in this reality, our action converted into the energy, then probably this might be kind of like a something very much different. Let's just say that key, you are getting so much anger and things and that, and you are actually converting this anger into kind of like some sort of energy. Let's just say you are kind of like a convert this into the electricity. So suddenly you became kind of like a something electric generator, right? Because you are getting so much angry, right? Or maybe you will kind of like convert this anger into kind of like a such energy, like a potential energy. Like potential energy means what? A potential energy means like that there is a kind of like some sort of energy is actually stuck inside of it, and it kind of like create that potential energy, and it release at some time when you hit someone. Like basically when the Black Panther is kind of like somebody hitting someone, it kind of like create that purple kind of like somebody energy. Like basically what is actually happened with the Black Panther is that ki whatever the kind of like a somebody the whatever the kind of like a somebody that he hit, whatever the kind of like a bullets or everything, when someone punch him, it kind of like a somebody that entire suit convert that kinetic energy into potential energy. Now that potential energy is kind of like a hold inside in its suit, and he won't like he will kind of like release that energy whenever it needed. So basically it's this thing, whenever that all the energy is kind of like a construct into the suit, and when he kind of like a punch, then all the kind of like a somebody that he hit like a bullet and everything he can punch into the fist, and entire energy that will release, and kind of like a destruction happen and things like that. Is kind of like a somebody so cool to see in something like that. Okay, yeah. So what if kind of like a something like that, like a, something like our energy, like a basically like anger is actually converted into potential energy, and whenever it needed, we just kind of like hit someone, and that particular person kind of like a somebody just kind of like a somebody go away and things and that like we might kind of like a some very much powerful like a Superman and things like that, right? Okay, it's kind of like it's really cool to say. It's really kind of like a some really amazing reality regarding about that. What if we could kind of like a simply convert our energy in our what if we could kind of like as a convert anger into kind of like a, such a form of energy, like a let's just say electromagnetic energy. Okay, yeah. We electromagnetic energy, it might be kind of like a we became kind of like a magnet. Okay, yeah. Probably. Okay, yeah. We might kind of like attract most of the kind of like a magnets, or not only magnet, but as also kind of like a iron parts and things, and that it would be really good. Okay, yeah. What if our anger, it kind of like a converted into the nuclear energy? Oh my god. Then you will kind of like a become kind of like something very much like a mobile nuclear bomb. Okay, like basically since you blast, the entire city will might gonna collapse and things like that. Okay, what if everyone kind of like a release the kind of like a some nuclear energy from their body by just kind of convert that anger into the nuclear energy? This might be kind of like a create a chaos. Probably is this thing that key every day there is a kind of like a some nuclear explosion happen at somewhere part of the world, probably. Right, yeah. Because there are kind of like a people are kind of like somebody getting so much kind of like a somebody energy, so much kind of like anger from the office and things and that, and they just kind of like released by this kind of like a nuclear form of energy. It was really cool to kind of like somebody saying things like that. Yeah, basically if I'm kind of like looking at that point of like perspective, then probably it's kind of like somebody fun part of create, like basically we could kind of like create this energy by kind of like somebody anger inside of us. Oh yeah, but we cannot kind of like somebody express our anger into the energy. No, we kind of like convert our anger into kind of like somebody part of action. Okay, yeah. Now basically this thing, how do we supposed to do that? How does kind of like a Virat Kohli is actually convert that anger into action, that kind of like action lead his growth and things like that? But because in this reality we cannot become a kind of like a simply nuclear power energy, or we cannot become electric power generator. No, nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. Our anger does not convert into the energy, our anger converted into action. Okay, yeah. So how do we supposed to channelize our action for our own good? So how do we supposed to do that thing like Virat Kohli does it? First of all, patience and control. Okay, yeah. First of all is that sometimes na action means what? Like basically most of people says that na I'm really so much angry and I'm kind of like I'm gonna kind of like do this kind of like things and that and that and that. Okay, yeah. One of the really important thing is that action means sometimes you don't do anything at all. That is also called action too. Okay, what I'm trying to tell you is this thing: when you are getting so much angry, and you know that when you kind of like do the action, it might gonna kind of like create the chaos and things like that. So instead of that, you just kind of like simply calm. Okay, and being a calm is also kind of like simply do action too. Example is this thing that ki you are in relationship, probably you had a kind of like a some fight with your partner and things like that for silly reason. Obviously is this thing like a you like a basically she kind of like a blame you for some certain things. Okay, yeah. Now what exactly happened that ki when you kind of like a release that anger towards her, then probably it might gonna cripple the relationship between you and her. It might gonna kind of like a cripple the wait, there is a kind of like a dog is actually disturbing me. Okay, where was I? Okay, yeah. I was kind of like talking about the anger. Yeah, how do we supposed to control our anger into the kind of like a some action that kind of like a some matter to us? How do we supposed to do that thing? Well, first of all, being a calm. Okay, yeah, calm is somewhat something really important thing. Okay, yeah. Example that I already mentioned. Okay, yeah. When you are kind of like somebody in relationship and something happened, when you try to express the anger towards her, probably it leads to kind of like some consequences of kind of like a destroying your relationship and things like that, and you don't want to. Okay, yeah. So sometimes being a calm is a kind of like a first step to kind of like a take that action. Yeah, and being a calm is also considered as action too, because if you don't really do anything at all and sometimes just kind of like simply accept the things, even if there is a kind of like assembly, there is no kind of like assembly, the problem happened because of you, but still you are kind of a consider this thing, it's a kind of like assembly you are taking for your team, you are taking for your relationship, and that's it. Being a calm is something really essential to be kind of like a calm at first step. Okay, yeah. Another thing is that you have this kind of like assembly anger towards. Okay, yeah. What should you supposed to do? What exactly is this thing? Now let's take this simple example. Okay, you are in relationship and things like that, and because of your kind of like a partner is kind of like a mad at you or something, and there is a kind of like a things actually happen. Now what should you supposed to do? What exactly is this thing? Okay, yeah. You just being a calm first of all. Okay, yeah. Then what should you supposed to do is a kind of like a somebody that try to bring some sort of like a basically like if she's kind of like a blaming you for something. Okay, yeah, you have to be try to communicate with her, try to talk with her, try to convince her that I didn't did it or things or that, by with politely and by with the communication, not kind of like a somebody use really angry word and things like that. Also kind of like a wait for let her calm. Okay, because sometimes na kind of like a somebody something is this thing that women are kind of like a somebody always kind of like a somebody really angry and things like that at the moment. So sometimes you just kind of like simply let her calm. Okay, and after a while you kind of like a talk to her, try to communicate her things like that, try to convince her regarding about what kind of like a issue was that and how do you supposed to solve that issue by kind of like a somebody by talking and things like that. Okay, yeah, by kind of like a using something really love language that you had, maybe kind of like a provide the gift or things or that. So what exactly happened, that whatever the kind of like assembly the whatever the kind of like assembly anger that you have, you are actually convert that anger into kind of like assembly such actionable step that kind of like leads you to kind of like assembly growth for your relationship and things like that. Okay, yeah. Like this is the example number one. Example number two, you are in the office. Okay, yeah. And you kind of like assembly your team leader is actually kind of like giving you a lot of work regarding about this and that. There is a weekend, and in the weekend you are kind of like assembly still doing the work and things like that, which is kind of like assembly really not feel really good, and you kind of like getting so much angry and things like that. So what should you supposed to do? What exactly is this thing? Okay, yeah. First of all, is that the team leader is actually provide you some sort of work, is not provide you is because of that you are kind of like a simply just like basically sometimes now you just kind of like a let them understand that your time is also really valuable too. Okay, yeah. But obviously you just have to understand the seniority, because he is a person, is a really senior person too, and you shouldn't supposed to be argue anything at all. So what should you supposed to do? What exactly is this thing? Okay, yeah. That key make sure that he was kind of like a saying the whatever the work on the weekend you have to do the work. Okay, yeah. Kind of like a sorry, whatever the weekend that you have cancel that plan and kind of like a let the do work, because you are kind of like a doing a job and you are kind of like earning some sort of amount of money and things like that. So it is really essential to do the work and things like that. But as well as you kind of like a let your senior actually let them know that you are kind of like a doing this sacrifice for the team and things like that. You kind of like a mention your team leaders that sir, I'm kind of like a doing this thing is because of that I do have plan, and kind of like somebody say this thing that sir, yes, I'm your kind of like a junior, but I don't like to kind of like somebody work on weekends on things like that. Be kind of like a very much polite with kind of like a somebody very much confidential and things like that. Like basically is this thing na ki tell your kind of like a somebody tell your point of perspective, that tell your point of perspective that I do have kind of like a somebody plan for weekend. I have kind of like a spending time with my family and things like that. It kind of like a somebody matter for me, because there is a kind of like a birthday of my mother and probably I wanted to spend, but because of this work I won't be able to do this thing and stuff like that. Like it's not, I'm not blaming for you and things like that, but still it's kind of like a things that you have to be considered that as an employee should have kind of like a some sort of life at home too, and probably at least for the weekend you have to let me kind of like a somebody give that freedom. Okay, yeah. Obviously with the polite, with kind of like a somebody proper request and things like that, your senior might gonna understand and he won't gonna let you any kind of like a work at the weekend. Probably he will gonna understand you what is actually your priority and things like that. Okay, yeah. Because sometimes now it is really essential that you are not kind of like really telling your opinion, and other people will take the advantage. Okay, yeah. People doesn't really take advantage. Like it's kind of like only is this thing that you don't really tell them that what exactly matter to you and things like that. Okay, yeah. Tell your opinion, tell your things. Other people are also people too, and they also understand that you have needs too. Okay, yeah. So probably it's kind of like convert your anger into action, that kind of like somebody leads you to kind of like something much more better way. Because like let me tell you one thing, I understand that why so many people are kind of like a convert that anger into kind of like a anger action, like a kind of like a somebody like a saying some sort of things, or kind of like a drinking alcohol and things like that. It's kind of like a somebody a coward way to do action. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing na you are kind of like somebody so much angry regarding about your boss and things like that, and you just have kind of like a lot of anger and things like that, and you just convert that anger into kind of like some drinking alcohol, and probably it's not really good, because in the end you are kind of like somebody, you are not affecting anything at all. You are kind of like somebody affecting bad with your life, as well as kind of like affecting your kind of like somebody professional life too. Okay, yeah. It is really essential to understand, yes, in the professionalism you have to maintain the kind of like a seniority and kind of like a maintain the respects and things like that, but it doesn't mean that other person take advantage of you. So it is really essential that you have to provide that why is actually matter to you, why is actually your life is actually matter to you and things like that. Let them tell. Okay, yeah. Be honestly, be confidently, and be respectfully too. Okay, yeah. And other person is understand. It's not really that we are living in kind of like a such a world where kind of like a king will rule the world and you are the slave and things like that. No, he's just a senior, that's it. Okay, yeah, he doesn't really have that much power and things like that. Even after he was kind of like a saying some sort of thing, go to his seniority and say this thing, this sir, this actually happened. My team leader is kind of like a letting me kind of like a work on the weekend, and I don't love it. I kind of like a did my work and things like that, and I just wanted to spend time with my family and things like that. Your other senior person might gonna understand this thing, and yeah, So this is would be kind of like a things that you are kind of like a convert that particular action, you are convert that anger into you are actually convert that anger into kind of like a such action that kind of like somebody leads to growth, leads to understand people and things like that. Okay, yeah. At the beginning, it might be kind of like a biggest, basically is this thing that no one will kind of like a take this step because of that. It's kind of like something very hard to do that thing. It really required a kind of like somebody courage to kind of like a talk to the senior about this and that. Like basically is this thing na ki telling your opinion to your senior and bitching to the senior, which one kind of like a somebody feel more easier to do? Obviously bitching your senior. And when you try to bitch your senior that he just kind of like a let me do on the weekend and he will kind of like a let me do work on the weekend and things like that, it's kind of like something bitching and never gonna work for you and never gonna kind of like a take advantage of your kind of like a career and things like that. Nothing really at all. So it is really essential to kind of like somebody let them understand ki what is actually their boundary and what kind of like a boundary that they shouldn't supposed to be crossed and things like that regarding about the work and priority. Because like a basically is this thing like there is no one job kind of like a letting you do any kind of like a work on the weekend. It's kind of like a somebody a moral support that you are kind of like a working for a team and company and things like that, and basically there is a kind of like consequences happen and you have to kind of like a somebody face that consequences. So at that in that particular period of time you and rest of the team are kind of like a working on weekend and things like that. There is no official notice and stuff like that, but you are the only one who is kind of like a working on weekend. Then probably is this thing na ki other people kind of like somebody take you advantage and things like that. Whatever, it's up to you. Like basically I don't really understand the consequences that you are been with and everything, but probably is this thing that the communication, the way that you talk with the politeness and with the respect and things like that, probably you would kind of like solve your problem. Okay, yeah. Now what exactly happened that if I'm kind of like somebody at kind of like at the signal at the road and someone kind of like crash my car, I'm getting so much angry. So what do I supposed to do? Obviously you are getting angry, so obviously you have to express that anger at that particular period of time. Okay, yeah, and it is really essential because there is no kind of like a blame on you. There is you are kind of like somebody sitting on kind of like somebody red light and someone kind of like somebody hit you with the back, and there is a kind of like somebody the collision happen and your car is get damaged and stuff like that. Obviously, is this thing you have to kind of like express their anger, and it is really essential to express the anger because obviously there is a kind of like a somebody 100% blame to him. Okay, yeah, you just kind of like tell him what the fuck did you did and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, obviously is this thing be the kind like basically just say that ki dude, you kind of like damage my car, now you have to repay me, things like that. Okay, yeah, like this is the only way that I'm gonna let you go. Okay, yeah, whoever the person that you are. Yeah, and that is somewhat something really essential. Okay, yeah, or like basically is this thing na ki I'm not saying is that ki do not trap the anger inside of you. I'm saying is this thing, whatever the anger that you have, convert that anger into kind of like some such action that leads you growth. One thing, and there is some sort of consequences that kind of like somebody it is really essential to express their anger too. Okay, yeah, like basically when you are in the traffic, someone kind of like hit you, someone kind of like somebody crash your car and things like that. So obviously you just have to express the anger, and it is essential. Okay, because of that particular person kind of like a stuff that they did that thing. So basically is this thing that there is a lot of things ups and downs and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, you won't be able to become a Virat Kohli at the first step, definitely not. Okay, yeah, and it is really essential to understand that Virat Kohli is also really get anger and he hit the century is not because of kind of like he just got the anger. No, like because of anger there is a less control of yourself, and when there is a less control of yourself you might become really vulnerable. But because of Virat Kohli kind of like did a lot of kind of like a practice regarding about the every ball and how he hit that ball into the kind of like a 6 and 4 and things like that. So that's why he just kind of like became pro, became kind of like a goat and things like that. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing na ki Virat Kohli is never really became kind of like somebody hit the century when he get the anger. No, he practiced a lot. Like basically his anger that we cannot see in the stadium, the entire anger that we see on the practice stadium. In the practice, he just kind of like somebody do the practice for almost like hours and hours and things like that to understand the ball and what kind of like how do I supposed to hit that ball at somewhere and somewhere. So this is what it is. It is not really that kind of like somebody he got the anger at the stadium and he just kind of like hit the ball and hit the century. It is not gonna happen, stuff like that. Let me tell you one thing, anger is a kind of like something really important emotion that we have. It kind of like somebody force you to kind of like let the do action, and it is okay to get the anger. It's not really that bad. Okay, yeah, being angry is not really wrong thing. What's actually wrong thing is that whatever the anger that you have, you are not using that anger for kind of like somebody, like you are not using your anger for kind of like right purposes, and that is what's something really wrong. So I think this is kind of like some energy that we could utilize in our real world. Okay, yeah. The question is actually says this thing that what if we could kind of like somebody convert our anger into kind of like a somebody energy and things like that. But still we are living in such a world where we are not become an electric generator or things like that. We are human and we are kind of like a convert our anger into kind of like a, such an action that matter to us. And that's the thing that we should supposed to be do. Okay. And sometimes like basically I don't really kind of like mention all the consequences. Obviously I don't really knew that because there are multiples of consequences that I don't know, and those consequences are kind of like a way much different that I could imagine and things like that. So sometimes it's kind of like a simply let it's up to you that how do you kind of like simply understand the consequences and things like that, and it's up to you that how do you kind of like simply control your action and things like that. Okay, I'm not kind of like giving you kind of like a guideline that what should you supposed to do and what not. Okay, yeah, it's up to you. It's understand the consequences and take the action by yourself. All right, this is it. I should supposed to be end here, and thank you.